ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for Tea Time Wages with good friend and colleague, Mr. Brady Kannon. Go follow him on X at Las Vegas Golfer, and of course, catch him on the Sports Grid. This week's headline: is it Jason's day at the John Deere Classic, as we getting closer to the final major? 4th of July is coming. What a weekend we had last weekend, as I had to get the correct pronunciation of a three-man playoff, which Brady had one of the three, Mr. Kirk, at 80-1. And yes, we got some Sunday sweats. Yes, we got our full money's worth, Mr. Kannon. Great eyes, just some tough luck there. So before we bring you in, shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to WagerWire and Google Play. Download the app. It is free. AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Steaks, seafood, chops, appetizers, wines. Terry's got it all. Head on over to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Place an order today. You could be grilling by the weekend. So without further ado, Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, good to be with you again. Yeah, double dip here in the Midwest. We talked about it last week. A little lull in the schedule, if you will. The field, certainly not what we're used to with the Scotties and the Rorys and all those guys missing. But hey, this has been fun. Last week was awesome. Like you said, a Sunday sweat. Chris Kirk right there. Oh, I thought he had it for us on the very first playoff hole. But it was a great pick, obviously. And I did hedge a little bit with Pote Guitar on Sunday morning. Got him in the neighborhood of 3-1. I felt it was going to be one of those guys. I felt it was either going to be, as we started to get towards the final round and you're looking at who's doing what, it was, let's see, like Andrew Putnam and Max Greiserman, who ended up going to the playoff. These guys were absolutely just hanging on by a red hot putter. And I'm like, that typically doesn't get you to the finish line. And Kirk and Pote Guitar were had a very, very good, well-rounded game. They were hitting the irons well. They were hitting the driver well. The putting was solid. It wasn't like off. It wasn't at one end of the spectrum where you expected regression. They were just playing nice and steadily. And sure enough, Pote Guitar gets it done. It did come down to those two. So I'm glad I was able to at least salvage a little money. But yeah, it would have been really nice. It's been 2 months that and 2 months is not, it's not eons without an outright win. We just got off to such a hot start this year. The last win we had was at the team event in New Orleans, which was a couple months ago. So it's been a minute, and I wrote about it in my column. Like, we haven't had one in a second. Let's get one. And I thought, okay, here we go. And but that's betting on golf. So we'll see if maybe this week we can turn the trick for our second straight Midwest Birdie Fest.
Aldrich
Pote Guitar.
The new name, I don't want to say flavor of the week, but now the quote unquote the longest hitter on tour.
Yeah.
a lot to like about him. I'm not going to compare the two, but I remember last year, earlier in the year, when Ludwig Oberg made his presence known. I'm not comparing these two, but it kind of has that feeling that there's a new sheriff in town, just a new name, new young name on tour.
Yeah, I think he's more along the lines of a Bryson DeChambeau with his length. I mean, he's really probably the longest player in the world. I think he's longer than any of the live guys. I don't know what his average driving distance is on tour. I know he's number one, but I mean, he was banging some of those drives out there on Sunday in Detroit, like 375, I think, and stuff like that. I mean, it was that tournament was fun, but boy, is it a Bombers, party. I mean, Bryson's won there, Tony Finau, Cam Davis, Podkitar. Um, like I say, it was fun, and it was fun because we had a guy in the mix. But when guys are hitting 9-iron for their second shot into par fives, I don't know if that's the best thing in the world. So, but Oberg, I think is the classier player. Now he hits it long, but he also hits it straight, and I think he has, major championships in his future. Podkitar, we'll see what the future holds. He's a young, raw talent at this point, 20 years old. You look at the guys that had won on tour before the age of 21 or something like that, international players, and it was a pretty heavy list. It was like Rory. Gosh, I can't even remember who was on that. Seve Ballesteros, Podkitar now. So, a list of heavy hitters, only about 4 or 5 guys that have ever done it. And so, yeah, I would say the future is very bright for this kid. But in my mind at this point, Oberg is Oberg's certainly I would say a top 10 player in the world. Not sure if Podkitar, maybe he's top 50, but who knows? 5 years from now, we could be talking the other way about both of them. So,
And what we talked about backstage, and I want to tell everyone out there, is South African. And as soon as I hear golf and South African, for me, Ernie Els, double E,
yep.
I was a huge, huge fan. And then you started rattling off some South African. Please enlighten everyone here what we're talking about for pure talent, because I don't think people know how many great golfers have come from South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, you go way back when. You start with Gary Player, a career Grand Slam winner, Gary Player. Ernie Els, one of my all-time favorites as well. Louis Oosthuizen, sweet swinging Louis Oosthuizen. Used to love watching him. Brandon Grace, Christian Bezuidenhout on the live circuit. Dean Burmester. So, yeah, Retief Goosen, 2-time U.S. Open winner. A long history of great South African players. And a guy that was born in South Africa. Now, he's an Englishman, but born in South Africa is Justin Rose. And I tell you one thing that's really interesting. Another guy we talked about that I think technically is not South African, but he's from Zimbabwe, is Nick Price. Love Nick Price as well. One of my favorites, a tremendous player. One thing that's really interesting about South Africans, and it's true of Justin Rose as well, even though, like I say, he was born there, but they all have this reputation of being tremendous bunker players. That's kind of been the stamp on South African golfers. And Justin Rose is also another excellent bunker player. So just kind of an interesting little caveat there.
John Deere Classic, 156 golfers, top 65 in ties. Tee off obviously Thursday, July 3rd. Defending champ Davis Thompson. Initial thoughts before we get to correlated courses and outrights and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit different from last week, but also very similar. In fact, you mentioned correlated courses. These were correlated for me. Detroit Golf Club and TPC John Deere. I definitely think they ask a lot of the same things as far as skill sets. But I think one difference is here, and with Podkitar winning, I think, moving forward, that was the 7th Rocket Classic, I believe, now that we've had. With Detroit Golf Club and whatnot. And I think it's becoming very, very clear that that is absolutely a bomber's paradise. And that's the direction we want to go moving forward when we're selecting winners for that golf course. It's been nothing but driver heavy, long guys that win at that golf course. And here at the John Deere, that's not necessarily the case. We've seen bombers win. Davis Thompson hits it a long way. Bryson DeChambeau has won here, his first PGA Tour victory. But then you look at other winners here: Sepp Straka, Brian Harmon, Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson, Steve Stricker. So it's really been a mixed bag of who wins here at the Deere. I think it's much more about efficiency off the tee. Good drives gained, if you will. That would be the metric. Doesn't have to be a monster in length, but it's got to be efficient. The fairways here are wide, but they are bordered by some pretty nasty rough. Whereas last week, the fairways were pretty wide, but it wasn't all the time that if you missed the fairway, you were in trouble. We saw those guys get out of the rough for the most part with relative ease. Now, there was some spots here and there, but I think that's probably the biggest difference between these two courses. You weren't really punished for missing the fairway last week. This week you will be. And then after that, a lot of it's the same. And I think maybe one of the biggest areas, and again, this is why Chris Kirk was a pick last week, and you could see it from all these guys watching that golf tournament, between 75 and 150 yards. That's where last week was won and lost. It was wedge play. You got to stuff it in there and you got to make some putts. Off the tee, wail away, hit it wherever you want. But, when you get down into that 75 to 150, that's when you really got to, put your game face on and convert from there. And I think it's very similar here at the John Deere. Got to be more efficient off the tee, not so footloose and fancy free and just let it rip. Got to be more efficient off the tee. But again, it's going to come down to ball striking and wedge play from 75 to 150. And then you got to find a hot putter for 4 days.
Mr. Sherman is over under this week. Do you know?
Yeah. A tick down and boy, did he nail it last week, right? 22.5 last week, and they finish at 22. Amazing. And it always seems to look like that early. I mean, we had guys shooting 61, 62, 63. You go, oh, this thing's going to get to 28. No, ends up at 22. This week, we're at 21.5. So a tick down. Now, last year, Davis Thompson won it at 28 under par. And if you look at the last 8 editions of the John Deere Classic, the average winning score is about 22.5. Now, the first 2 days here, Silvis, Illinois, it's kind of seemingly going around all over the country right now. We've got kind of monsoonish type weather here in Las Vegas. First 2 days in the area look great. And I think you're going to see this again where guys are shooting 61, 62, stuff like that. We've had 59s here before. But then there is some weather on the horizon for the weekend. One day looks like the wind might blow in the neighborhood of 20 miles an hour, both Saturday and Sunday with possible thunder showers. So we'll see what the weekend holds. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Sherman is spot on and the winner's at 22 or 21 again, right? But it looks like the first couple of days, it's going to be absolutely a birdie fest for these guys.
Well, we're going to give you the front tee box here and let you take it away and do what you do best.
Well, as far as the correlated courses, again, it's similar to what we did last week. Detroit Golf Club, I'm going to use this week. I used TPC Deere Run last week. I used Royal Liverpool last week. I used TPC Twin Cities where they have the 3M Open. I used that last week, but added a couple new ones this week, TPC Scottsdale and Colonial. I'm pretty sure I know Jordan Spieth and Zach Johnson. I think Spieth, Johnson, and Stricker have all won at Colonial and at the John Deere. So we do see some crossover there with those. And I don't know if you know this already, Jeff, but I'm going back to Captain Kirk. I'm going to go 2 weeks in a row with this guy. He finished 12th at the U.S. Open. And that was kind of an indicator right there. We know that he's been a classy player for a long time. He's 40 years old. He had a win in 2023, had a win in 2024. He won at Kapalua. He won at the Honda, the Cognizant Classic. Contended last week at Detroit. I guess I read some quotes somewhere that said he did not want to enter. I'm trying to remember what the last tournament. Oh, the Travelers. I guess he was eligible to go to the Travelers, but he said no. I'm gonna save my entry for Detroit and the John Deere, because I think I can really get after it at those two courses. I think they suit my game. So he was spot on. And if he was right last week, then maybe he's right again this week. And, I think he's a veteran enough guy where, coming close like that and ultimately not being able to kick the door down, I don't think that ruins him. He's been down this road a number of times before. I think he comes right back. And again, he's one of the very best players in the world, really, and certainly this field from 75 to 150. That's why I liked him last week. He's that great wedge player, and the putter is probably ultimately what let him down last week. But hey, if you're going to tell me he's going to get all the way to a playoff again this week, I'll take my chances. Now the price has been cut in half. We had him 80 to 1 last week. This week he's in the neighborhood of 35. I got him 38. I've seen 40. But I understand that as well. And I'm okay with that price cut. It's still a pretty good price. So he was my shortest shot. Chris Kirk. Here's another guy, by the way, who has won at Colonial. So we'll take a shot with him this week again. Hopefully he's right there in the mix for us again. And then I went with Lucas Glover at 41 to 1. The last time we saw him was at the Travelers Championship, finished top 10, shot all 4 rounds in the 60s. He has won here at the John Deere before. Good history on the correlated courses, and he's another guy that is that ball striker from 75 to 150. That's probably my main stat that I'm looking at this week. Great in good drives gained. Both he and Chris Kirk, they hit it fairly far and they hit it pretty darn straight. So I like that metric as well this week. And then Michael Kim at 50 to 1. Again, another former winner here at the John Deere in 2018. And if you look at Michael Kim, this guy has made the cut 10 weeks in a row. And that includes 3 signature events and 3 major championships. So he is playing some pretty darn good golf. And now you put him back in a place where he's won before. It's against a watered down field. He was 26th last week in Detroit. I think, 50 to 1, pretty good number on a guy that has been really, really consistent at some big boy events, for the last 3 months. So I took a shot with Kim, and again, another guy that really nails it, from those shorter distances with a wedge in his hand. And then speaking of South Africans, Christian Bezuidenhout makes the card for me this week, 65 to 1. He was runner up here at the John Deere last year, I believe it was. No, runner up in 2022. And he was 4th earlier this season at TPC Scottsdale. And by the way, his last 4 trips to the Charles Schwab at Colonial, 16th, 17th, 21st, and 15th. So really consistent at that track. Tremendous short game. Again, good with the wedges. And this guy is one of the better putters in the world, certainly this field. So, and a lot of times a birdie fest becomes a putting contest. And Bezuidenhout certainly one of the best with a flat stick. Kevin Roy. I don't think I've ever played this guy for an outright before, but he really popped in the stats this week. I've seen him as low as 50 to 1. I was able to find 79 to 1. He was 8th last week at the Rocket Classic, and he ranked 3rd in that field for strokes gained approach and 4th for strokes gained tee to green. Over the last 24 rounds, he is 11th in this field for strokes gained ball striking. He's 8th for good drives gained, and he's 3rd for strokes gained on the par 4s. Par 71 course. Of course, there's 11 par 4s this week. And yes, once again, he's also very, very good from 75 to 150 yards out. So, he's a little bit of a kind of a tour journeyman veteran guy. He's 35 years old. But he's been playing some awful good golf as of late. And we see the John Deere has been a breeding ground for guys getting their first tour win. Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, or excuse me, Bryson DeChambeau, Brian Harmon, Sepp Straka, the list goes on and on. So I think it's very possible that you get kind of a random guy to notch his first victory this week, and Kevin Roy would absolutely fit that bill. And so with this guy, really, Sami Välimäki, the man from Finland, at 95 to 1. I've seen him as high as 100. He was 19th last week in Detroit, shot all 4 rounds in the 60s. He was 12th here on debut at the John Deere last year. And by the way, he opened with a round of 61. So he now knows how to get it around this joint. He is also, like Bezuidenhout, one of the best putters in this field. So we'll take a shot with Sami Välimäki. He's playing pretty well as of late, and I think he makes sense in a birdie fest as well. So a 6-pack there with Chris Kirk, Lucas Glover, Michael Kim, Christian Bezuidenhout, Kevin Roy, and Sami Välimäki.
And your top 20s, Kirk, Glover, and Kim?
Correct. Yeah. Played the shorter shots for top 20s, Kirk, Glover, and Kim. They're in the neighborhood of plus 175 to plus 200. And then the rest of the guys for top 40 in the neighborhood of even money to plus 125. I kind of started going that direction with some of the longer shots, playing them for top 40, still at plus money, and keeping the top 20s for the shorter shots. And then I had one more play here that I think is really interesting. It's been an interesting week for our good buddy, the Stanford Cardinal, Michael Thorbjornsen. This guy is all of a sudden Greg Norman. He is the most popular. People have Monday's newspaper. He's already won the John Deere, according to a lot of people in the golf betting space across the entire. He's the greatest player since sliced bread, apparently, this week. This guy was 90 to 1 to win last week in Detroit. Now he's 25 to 1. What happened? Did I miss something? Is this guy now on the Ryder Cup team? I know he's a big talent, and a lot of people have a lot of high hopes for this guy. He did finish runner-up at the John Deere last year to Davis Thompson. Yes, but let's remember, he went nuts on Sunday. I think he made like 7 birdies in a row to make a charge and try and take down Thompson. And got him all. It is kind of like the Rory McIlroy round on Sunday when he never had a shot to win it at all, but he ends up finishing 5th. That's kind of what Thorbjornsen did last year at the John Deere. Also had a great finish last week at the Rocket Mortgage where he finished 4th. I understand he's a solid player, but this guy all of a sudden has gone to the most popular choice on the board. And I think it's between sharp bettors and recreational players all alike. And I'm like, did I miss something here? And so I actually went the complete opposite, and I bet him to miss the cut at plus 180. And I got a little bit of affirmation here this morning when I punched up my email and I saw the email they send out to the folks in the media about golf betting, where the betting splits are and everything like that. Who's the number one biggest liability this week at BetMGM? Yeah, you guessed it, Michael Thorbjornsen. So you know how it is when the ship gets loaded with that many people, often it sinks. And I'm betting it might this week. And here's another thing that I think is very interesting about Thorbjornsen, Jeff. Who's he paired with this week? Potkitar and Ben Griffin. Ben Griffin, the favorite in this field, who's won recently on Twitter, one of our last winners, the team event in New Orleans, won at Colonial. He is the role of the favorite. He's the shortest price on the board this week. And Potkitar, who just won for the first time. And now we're going to put Michael Thorbjornsen in that 3-ball for the first 2 days. That tells me the expectations are that he's all of a sudden with this group. He's never had expectations like this in his career. So I just don't know if he's ready for this yet. Again, like I say, the guy's very good. He's probably going to get a win here sometime soon. But I think to pile on the kid, early and often and so heavily this week is a little bit like, whoa, okay. I'm gonna see if I can take advantage and go the complete opposite way here. And I'll bet that he stubs his toe and misses the cut at plus 180.
I wanted, before we wrap up here, I told you the story. I sent you the text yesterday, and you're a data guy. You're an analytics. You follow numbers like I do. I want you to help me understand this. So usually when Scotty's in the field, Scotty's 3, 4 to 1. The next, if Rory or someone like that, the next closest guy is 7, 8 to 1. But if there's no in between guy, the next guy's 15 to 1. Okay. Doing my homework over the last couple days, and I looked at Circa, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I sent you the text. Ben Griffin plus 1150, and I'm like, well,
Yeah,
wait a minute, wait a minute. So then I go check DraftKings and a few others plus 1600, and it's usually
right.
the exact opposite. The next closest is Jason Day at like 25 to 1. So I'm just asking you, what is this? Is almost like a Scheffler and then a, I don't know, pull a Justin Thomas, that kind of what is the reasoning for this gap this week, Brady?
Well, Griffin is certainly a hot player right now. And, if he wins again this week, he probably solidifies a spot on the Ryder Cup squad. He's maturing into a really good player. We always knew he was good, but now he's starting to win. And yeah, does he deserve to be the favorite this week? He's close anyway, for sure. I mean, Jason Day, yeah, he's, I mean, is Ben Griffin really 11 to 1 or something to win this week? No, I don't think so. Jason Day at 20 or 25, 22. Yeah, I get that. But I didn't think that way for Ben Griffin. And I didn't want to necessarily fade him either. He does have the win at Colonial this year, and we talked about the correlation with Colonial. He's done very well here in the past. Another guy that has a great track record here that is very popular this week is Denny McCarthy. But I don't really love McCarthy's form right now. He hasn't shown the Denny McCarthy we're often used to seeing, that finishes top 5 in some big boy events and stuff like that. It was recently, I want to say it was at the Travelers, where McCarthy was playing really well, but of all things, he couldn't putt. I mean, he's one of the best putters in the world, and he had a really tough time putting. I believe it was at the Travelers. So I think something's just off a tick with him. I saw exactly what you're talking about. I saw 14 to 1 at the Westgate. I saw the 16 to 1 at DraftKings. I punch up Circa on Monday, and he's like plus 1150. And wow, somebody hit him hard. Now he's back up as we're getting closer to game time. Circa has moved him to 13 to 1. I wouldn't be surprised if he closed at 14. He'll probably take a couple more hits, but he took one big whack early in the week, it appears, at Circa. I would be surprised if he didn't play well, Jeff, but I don't necessarily think he's going to win. Now, Thor Bjornsson for me was a whole different story. He has never won before on the PGA Tour, and all of a sudden, he's been given sainthood like status this week. I'm like, hey, wait a second. Okay, you want to treat Ben Griffin that way? Okay, yeah, he's got a couple of wins already this year. I get it, but Thor Bjornsson, no, I didn't think he was quite ready for that upgrade, if you will, in stock.
I know we're gonna have a nice next 7 to 10, 12 days, but I always have to end this route in this segment here. They know where to follow you on the Las Vegas Golfer on X. Of course, you and I know where to follow each other on Sports Grid. You got CBS Sports now. You got Sportsline. Where can they find your written work, the rest of your week schedule next week?
Yeah, absolutely. I have just put up the article for golf.com that has all the outrights with further detail, what we've gone over here on the show. And then, like you say, CBS Sportsline, you can find my work there, sportsline.com. That's also on my Twitter feed. get into a little bit, that we differentiate between the two articles, get into a little bit different areas with, and in fact, I'll just come out and tell you, in the CBS article, they like to have me point out a couple people or whatever that I'm going to fade this week. Well, guess who we're fading this week? I think I've said his name about 52 times. Michael Thorbjornsen is my fade this week. So, but yeah, go check those out. I probably won't be on the grid a whole lot. I'll be on there today, 7:30 Eastern, and then again 10 p.m. Eastern. But going to go on a vacation for a couple days here, and probably just bits and pieces as far as where you find me on the grid. But got to recharge the batteries and get ready for that one final major of the year at Royal Portrush.
Next week, where are we? Are we
Scottish Open, man?
Scottish.
I love the fact that this is now a part of the tour calendar. You remember years ago, some guys would go over there as a pre-British Open tune-up. Well, now it's a part of the schedule. And so, yeah, I think it's great that, a lot more people are over there now for the pre-Open tune-up. And, Bobby McIntyre wins. Oberg had a great tournament, if I recall, there last year. So, yeah, I think, Rory, in an incredible comeback fashion, overtakes McIlroy or McIntyre the year before. And then Bobby Mack has talked about, winning his home country's Open is almost bigger than a major championship for him. So, yeah, good big boy event. A lot of times there's scores to be made out there. You know how it is across the pond. It's kind of all weather dependent. If the conditions are really benign, these guys can get after these courses. But we'll see. It'd be a great couple of weeks, first in Scotland and then in Ireland.
We can't wait. Go follow Brady at Las Vegas Golfer. Make sure you tune in tonight on the Sports Grid as well. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., Matthew George, also of Sports Grid, will be here to talk some WNBA. What's going on in the damn NBA? If you every other second, someone's getting traded, someone's getting cut, whatever it is. So Matthew will keep us updated on that, of course. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Investor, one and only Mr. Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer, we wish everyone a blessed day. Let's cash some tickets. We'll see you soon.